Well, good morning, church family. It's good to see you this morning. Thanks for being here. My name is Melanie Gardiner, and I have the awesome privilege of being an assistant pastor along with my husband, Mike, here at Cornerstone Chapel. And I get to message today with you, and I always like to take a minute and thank Pastor Mark and Deb for giving me this opportunity to be able to share my heart with you this morning. Before we get into it, I remind you, At the Movies will start next week, and so we do have some invitation cards. You'll see them as you exit the sanctuary today. Grab a few of these, maybe invite somebody to join you next Sunday at church for a movie and a message and popcorn and water and all that fun stuff. You can also invite people electronically. So for those of you that are joining us online, you can also go to our Facebook page and share our events that way and make sure that we spread word about where you will be next Sunday. So maybe somebody can join along with you. I do want to remind those that are joining us online that next Sunday you'll need to go to cornerstonechapel.org in order to view the service and be a part of it with us. Because of copyright reasons, we will not be on YouTube or Facebook for the next 3 weeks. But otherwise, go to cornerstonechapel.org and you can jump on with us. Well, I do get to bring the last installment of the current series that we have, which is God-honoring relationships. And in week number 1, we talked about the what, who, and how of God-honoring relationships. Week number 2 was about letting go of offenses. That's what Pastor Mark had that fence and was walking around with it. And then week number 3 was honoring spiritual leaderships, where we felt very honored by all of you and our elders and council. And then week number 4 was loving difficult people. That was only a week ago, but isn't it amazing how many times throughout the week we probably referred back to that message as we came in contact with some people that are a little bit difficult. So today I'm going to be talking about God-honoring family relationships. So let's start by talking about what family is. I have a definition, and that is people who support and love you and the people you can confide in and trust. So sometimes family comes to us through blood relations, sometimes through adoption. Other times you might have just hung around with somebody for so long they become family to you. There's lots of names that we might call each other, brother and sister. I know that we do that here at church, but in other places, somebody is like a sister to you, even though you don't share the same blood. Aunt and uncle, growing up, we had someone that was just a close family friend that I called aunt and still do to this day. So I'm not sure if your family operated like that as well. A grandma and grandpa, sometimes you'd visit a friend's family and somehow their grandparents just became like grandparents to you. Or the same with mom and dad. My brother's friends growing up would call my mom, Mama Clark, because she fed them, took care of them, cleaned up after them. They become like a mother to you. So a little insight into my family. I'm going to show you a picture. Growing up, this is actually my Uncle Neil. See, my mom loved Neil Diamond so much. For some reason, she called him Uncle Neil. For many, many, many years, we would listen to Uncle Neil's songs. We knew that he was a talented guy. She would even go sometimes on a date night with my dad to go see Uncle Neil. And it was not until well into my teen years that I finally realized Neil Diamond is a very famous person, and he is not related to us. He was not coming to Christmas at our house anytime soon. But my mom called him Uncle Neil. So that's a little snapshot into my family. Here at the church family, we can see the inner workings sometimes. We, do get to sit down with people that become like brothers and sisters. You may have, a father in the faith that you meet with, a mentor, that sort of thing. Also at work, often it becomes like a family relationship as well. In school, the same kind of thing. Or maybe if you have a hobby or common interest that you might do. When you play soccer, you somehow become soccer family with each other, or whatever it may be. Really, family boiled down is a team. You work together, you have a common goal, you spend time together and rub shoulders together on a regular basis. Today's big idea is that being in a God-honoring family relationship means that we need to embrace that we were created to not be alone. Let's say that part again. Being in God-honoring family relationships means we need to embrace that we were created to not be alone. And so for some people, when you hear that, you're like, yes, awesome. I get to live life with other people. I love people. It's like one of my very favorite things. And then for other people, depending on your personality, like Pastor Mark talked a few weeks ago, for some personalities, you may think, oh, yay, I get to live life with people. That's how God created me. I really like to be alone, and I usually don't like to live life with other people. Well, we're going to talk a little bit about what that can look like for you. And the biblical example, I'm going to start in Ecclesiastes and just kind of read about it a little bit. It says in Ecclesiastes 4, starting in verse 9, 2 are better than 1 because they have a good reward for their toil. For if they fall, one will lift up his fellow. But woe to him who's alone when he falls and has not another to lift him up. Again, if 2 lie together, they keep warm. But how can one keep warm alone? And though a man might prevail against one who is alone, 2 will withstand him. A threefold cord is not quickly broken. And we hear that often at weddings, that last portion of it, just painting that picture of the husband and wife, being united with Christ in their journey together. So this scripture kind of lets us know that we're supposed to surround ourselves with people, but it talks more importantly as well that we should also have partnerships, that we should have some other person in our life. These can often be the people that we sit across the table from or next to in the car, or we live life with people, and they are a part of our team. One of the many examples is marriage. And marriage is like, any other partnership, can be a bit trying. So there's a pastor that actually had a quote that I wanted to share with you. And it says, "Nowadays, no one has more to do with marriage than with all other matters. Because of them, we can hardly read, preach, or study. I've observed many married couples coming together in such a great passion that they were ready to devour each other for love. But after half a year, one ran away from the other. I've known people who have become hostile to each other after they have 5 or 6 children and were bound to each other not merely by marriage, but also the fruits of their union, yet they left each other." And this pastor, I think, is painting the picture of what can happen within marriage sometimes. You see the absolute love that 2 people can have for each other, and yet often within that, that union, that often people, want to flee and not be a part of it anymore. So, this started with nowadays. It's painting a picture of what we might see is currently going on. And yet, if I tell you who the author is, you'd think it's probably somebody you'd know, present day. It was actually written by Martin Luther over 400 years ago, because that's what he was seeing in his community. That's what he was seeing, people sitting across from him that were just struggling within their marriage. So having, some conflicts or things that don't always go right within these relationships, that's nothing new. It's been around for a lot of years. So why are God-honoring family relationships just so difficult? Pastor Mark and Deb kind of shared their stories about some things that annoy each other, easily offended, that sort of thing. They were pretty transparent with us last week, so I thought, well, I have an example that is way too perfect for this, and I will give you a little insight into our relationship. And asked Mike about it. He's like, yeah, go ahead and share it. So we had the opportunity to go on a vacation at the beginning of the summer, and for anyone that is maybe newer to marriage or maybe not, really the best time to pick up an offense against your spouse is not before you're in the car with them for 14 hours starting a vacation. So just take note of that. That's really not a great time to do it. But we had got ourselves, into the car, 3 kids, all the stuff that we need to have for the week, and we were in that part of the trip where you're kind of too far away from home to turn back if you forgot something. And I had kind of a list of stuff that we had in the car, the master list that made it into the car. And I had this list that kind of were some things that Mike would get that he would personally use. And so we're at that point probably an hour away from home, and I turned to him and I said, hey, did you remember that? And I just listed a few things on the list. And he said, oh no, I forgot those things. And he didn't, blame me for not remembering them or not reminding him sooner that he should be bringing these things. But something about his reaction to it just really triggered me. And I picked up an offense pretty quickly with that. So we go about our drive some more, and the way it typically goes, I love driving, and so I will have a book on tape or, some music that I'm listening to. And then he has a physical book. He's sitting in the front seat enjoying his book, and it was like mile after mile that went on. That offense just got heavier and heavier. It went from a tone or certain way that he spoke to me to, after a few miles, it was just like it had totally exploded in my head as to what had happened. And so we're continuing on, stopping at the, rest stops, and I'm just going about just like stewing. And we finally arrive to this beautiful place, unload everything, and he's picking up on the fact that maybe I'm not really happy with him. Probably could be the way that I was like, kind of being short, or, maybe not like looking at him directly when we were talking, and, that sort of thing. He probably could play it off like, oh, she's just busy and stressed with, getting here and wanting to get everything undone. So he asked me a little bit later that first night, and he's like, is everything okay? Are you mad at me? Well, what do you think I answered? No, everything's fine. Even though for 14 hours I had created this case in my mind of why I was thoroughly offended, what he had done wrong, why I was hurt, and yet I didn't tell him. So we go about for that evening. By the morning, I can tell he knows something is definitely stopped. So it's kind of like at this point, I think he just wants to get on with vacation and have it feel somewhat normal. And so he's just like, come on, like, what is going on, And I just turned to him and I just said, I feel like we are out of step with each other. We are not on the same page. You said something to me back in the car, and I can see him like replaying it like, I don't even know that I remember what I said or what I did. And I'm telling him about this offense and why it's not okay and why we aren't on the same page and where he went wrong. And I'm saying, from my side, all this stuff. And he just listened and was like, all right, let's talk this through. Let's work this out. And then it was like so much better. And we could go on with the rest of our vacation because we had taken some time to actually address it. So that's what I'm going to talk a little bit about today, is how to be in step with the people that are on our team. It's not fun when you're out of step. I think even the kids were picking up on it. We were more short with each other. I didn't like it either, but yet somehow I had a hard time being able to share, what was frustrating me and bothering me so much. And that offense really weighed me down in particular, because Mike kept going and I was so stuck because that offense just really weighed me down. So this is what can kind of happen when you're out of step with family. I'm going to give some examples. So as you're going about life, if you're like this, sometimes, things can feel good. They can feel easy. This is kind of your happy place when two people are together. That can be at work, within your family, within your marriage, that sort of thing. But often what can happen is as you're going, one person may have a miscommunication, and then all of a sudden that becomes an offense and silence. This person is stopped, this person's going, and sometimes doesn't even realize, probably until you hit the silence part and you're not really talking to each other, that you even notice that something's wrong. Another example is as you're going about life, one person may feel that there's unmet expectations, and that stops them right there while the other person continues on. This person then feels unfulfilled and gives distance with this person because they are not feeling like they had unmet expectations. The last example, I think, happens really often in families that maybe have young kids still or just busy schedules. But as you're going along, sometimes you have bad time management, and that makes so that you have a lack of contact, and that stops this person here. The other one could be going on with things, and then there's a shallowness to your relationship because you haven't had that time to get together and make sure that you're in stride with each other. So in Ecclesiastes, that's the scripture I shared first, it talks about some actions. It says that when one person falls, that we should stop and pick them up. It doesn't say when one person falls to just keep moseying on by, and they'll figure it out at some point. It talks about that two people together will be warm, or one by themselves will not. And so that shows action, that we need to reach out to the other people that are on our team to make sure that we're there for them. So how can we be a better team and ultimately honor God through that partnership? Well, I read a little bit about an awesome set of teammates. How many of you watched the Olympics when it was just on in Tokyo? Did you catch any of it? There were some interesting things that they had, like speed walking. I'd never heard of speed walking before. That's kind of interesting. And like the trampoline things where they're like going really high up in the air. I really enjoy just seeing everyone compete and each of the countries just send their best to have this time together. Well, a few weeks after the Olympics, there's also the Paralympics. Raise your hand if you watched any of the Paralympics. So it's for the adaptive community. And I heard about a team of two people that were going to be running. Actually, David Brown is the world's fastest blind man. He's on the left on the screen. And his guide is on the right. His name is Jerome Avery. And the two of them have been partners in running together for quite some time. David Brown's best event is the 100-meter, which is a short run. And actually, they won the gold together in Rio for the 100-meter. They did it in 10.99 seconds. That is crazy to me because I just can't even imagine being able to run that quickly, yet alone running with a guide. So the way that they run together, the way they partner together is as they're running, they're actually connected by a 6-inch piece of string that's held onto their hands. So they need to be very much in sync with each other in order to make this happen. When I look at that, I think, how can you be that in sync that I would be dragging the other person or I would be the one being drugged? Because that just boggles my mind. As I was reading a little bit more about it and trying to understand their partnership and how they make it work, I had read as well as running quickly, a good guide has to ensure that they are in sync with their partner and not cause them to run inefficiently. They basically need to run in sync so that if you're looking at them from the side, you actually just see one person. Isn't that an awesome concept? Isn't that, how we should be as well? The other thing is that they're truly committed to this because the rules state that if a runner starts a race with a guide, they have to finish with them. So the athletes need to carefully weigh the pros and cons of being a guide or having a guide or just trying to do it by yourself. If the guide is slowing them down, athletes can't just drop the rope and continue all on their own. So think about how that relates to our family relationships. How often do we see in society that, if things aren't going well, they just say, well, just drop the rope and, you don't have to finish the race with them, right? This is a great example of, a true partnership and being on the same team. When asked how important it is to have a guide, David Brown said, "To have a guide is vital. I can't do it without him. I don't understand because this guide could say, I want to do my own thing, but instead he's running with me and it's an honor." He runs in that same time that David does, which means he could go on his own and do his own competition, but instead he sees the importance of being a guide for David and why their partnership is so important. And I also read that just because you're a good runner doesn't mean you can guide. So it's not that you're looking for someone else that has the same time as them. You need someone else that's willing to partner with you and be able to do that. They said the first step is to have trust and a good relationship. And once you have that, then it makes a whole lot easier for them to be able to compete together. So I thought there were a few things within this that were great concepts that I'd just like to draw out. 4 ways that we can keep in step with the people in our lives. Because if we are in step with others, I think that we are a stronger team for the Lord. So number 1, communicate where you're going. As we were talking about David and his guide, they have to communicate where they're going. They have to know if they're running the 100-meter, the 200-meter, so that they can start and stop with each other. They have to know, what the expectations are for this. There's also many runners that are blind that are also compete for the longer distances. They actually wear something around their waist that has a string to another person around their waist as well. And when they get to, start, they have to communicate a lot. They go over different terrains. They do a lot of, curves and uphill and downhill. So you need to communicate where you're going. For us as a family, this means you might need to set goals. You need to submit to the Lord to be the guide, of your family. But make sure that as a team, you're making a plan. You're including everybody. It says in Proverbs 16:9, "In their hearts humans plan their course, but the Lord establishes their steps." So make sure as you're planning, if you're a planner like me, sometimes you can do it and not even consider what the Lord might want you to do. But that's an important part of it as well, including Him, knowing that He will establish all of our steps. We need to be in tune with God and in tune with each other, and it's that 3 strands that we talked about that really makes the best relationship. So number 2, check in on your teammate. In this situation, David and his guide, they're, in tune with each other. The guide is watching because he has sight as far as where they're at and if they need to make any adjustments. But for David, he's listening. He's relying a lot on his teammate in order to set the tone. They need to make adjustments as they go and need to trust each other that they're in this together. For us, we can be intentional within our relationships. We can ask, how are you doing? And be okay with whatever your teammate might say. If you're at work, you can tell some things up, or if just in general you want to do a check-in with that other person and be willing to listen to whatever they're saying. It might mean that you need to make adjustments on your side, or it might mean that they need to make adjustments on theirs. But I would say let it be both ways. Check in with your teammate, but also be willing to share when they check in on you too, because that's where we kind of went wrong, especially that first time that Mike asked me what was wrong. He was checking in on me and I didn't want to tell him what was going on, and we could have stopped it that evening, had the conversation and talked about it, but I just wasn't willing to share my heart at the time. So check in on your teammate, but be willing to be checked in on as well. It says in Colossians 3, it gives us kind of a list of some of the attributes that we can have while we relate to people. It says, "Therefore, as God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved, clothe yourselves with compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. Bear with each other and forgive one another if any of you has a grievance against someone. Forgive as the Lord forgave you, and over all these virtues put on love. That's what binds them all together in perfect unity." So I see some of these attributes of compassion, kindness, humility, gentleness, and patience. These are all important things for us to have when we're on a team as we check in with our teammates to make sure that's at the forefront. That's the first thing that we approach somebody with. We approach somebody with, humility and kindness. It shouldn't be that we're, defensive and, calling them out on things and something negative, but instead start the conversation with patience and understanding and compassion. And then as it says at the end, love really is the blanket over all of those things because it binds us together in perfect unity. So if we're approaching someone in love, then that will help lead to unity. For us, we plan times to connect and check in. Sometimes when Mike and I know we're heading into a busy time, we'll try to intentionally schedule like maybe a date night or something around then and make time knowing that we may not have connected very much that week. We are intentional about it. My mom used to call it 2 ships passing in the night. There's certain seasons I feel like Mike and I can be 2 ships passing in the night, and our schedules just don't align, and it's very important during that time to be of good communication. And we feel the same, as a staff as well, that we make time to make sure that we're proactive with conversations to make sure that we feel supported and loved by each other. And also, as far as being a parent, sometimes before your kids are of driving age, you're alone in the car with your kids, and I think that's a great time to check in with your teammates because you need to remember that's what it is too. It's a partnership with your kids, no matter what age they are. Check in with them and be intentional about that time. It doesn't have to be grilling them or asking all these weird questions, just opening your heart to them and then letting them open their heart to you so you can connect and know that you are on the same team together. So number 3, so we already talked about number 1 is to make sure that we communicate where we're going. Number 2 is to check in on each other. And number 3 is to chide, chant, and hold up. And when David was explaining it, he said he actually, because he relies so much on his hearing, it's almost like a metronome that they have together. They're at the race start, and they kind of know the rhythm of a metronome that they'll have as they're running. And so that's something that he pays attention to make sure that they're in step with each other. They basically rely on each other to keep up that way. There's also words of encouragement. Sometimes they'll give each other. Because it's very short, it's only 10.99 seconds, he said they try not to use, their breath for that, but there are certain times that they'll, especially during training, that they'll encourage each other. He said sometimes one of them will meet up to practice and just say, I'm not feeling it today, but you know what, they're a team. One of them is not going to do it without the other. And so they find a way to kind of pick themselves up and say, no, we can do this together. You may not be able to feel like you're doing it today, but listen, we can do this together. So for us, I think as we are a part of a team, we need to be there to encourage our teammates. As I was thinking about this, I think the best example in Scripture is Moses, Aaron, and Hur. So I would love to jump in Exodus. Starting in verse 11 of chapter 17, I love this story because I think it gives us a great visual of partnership. And so jump in with me. It says, as long as Moses held up the staff in his hand, the Israelites had the advantage. So they're at a war and they knew what was working. As long as Moses would hold up the staff, then they were going to be the victor. But whenever he dropped his hand, the Amalekites gained the advantage. Moses' arms soon became so tired that he could no longer hold them up. I mean, we can't blame the guy. No matter how much you do arm day at the gym, you probably reach a point you can't do it anymore. So Aaron and Hur found a stone for him to sit on. Then they took it one step further, and they stood on each side of Moses, holding up his hands so his hands held steady until sunset. Now that's a true team. And those are good friends that are willing to do that, because I can imagine it was also physically very hard for them to do that as well. And as a result, they did win the battle. And so I think the visual of Moses sitting on the stone and the two of them on the right and left helping during this time is a great image of what teamwork can look like for a family, for a work family, church family, that sort of thing. So let's talk about some examples of holding each other up or maybe picking up the slack. In different situations, every family is different, but you may have, an aging parent, and during that time, you need to help while your, spouse is helping take care of someone else, or within a family as siblings. It's something that you carry together, and you help each other to get through that. Mike's parents passed away within a year of each other, and during that time, they each had different illnesses, and there's many times that I just held down things at home a little bit stronger during that time so that he could be free to be with his parents. That was important to him. It was important to me. And I think that's something that we need to remember is what's important to the people on our team should also be important to us. You may have a coworker that's going through a tough time, and maybe you can pick up some of the slack to help get them through a rough season, but it would take you offering that and encouraging along the way, letting them know, why you're willing to do that and just being there for them. We'd have a new mom that's maybe struggling with, postpartum depression and just getting used to being a mom. And it's like, let's surround the people in our lives in order to offer help and be there for them during any time that they may need us. Your kids might be going through a hard time. They may have had a bad day at school or a recent breakup, that sort of thing. Just being there to encourage them and hold them up during that time, that's what it's all about. I was thinking back on actually our wedding day. We got married right here in the sanctuary, and I was out in the hallway waiting to walk down the aisle. And leading up to the wedding, I am a very emotional person, and something I felt very strongly about is that I really didn't want to be crying when I was walking down the aisle, because I kind of do an ugly cry, and I tend to get like red and blotchy, and it just isn't fun. And I was like, just get me down the aisle, and once I'm down, I don't care if I'm up here and I get emotional, but I really just wanted to have that moment be a moment I was radiating like, beauty, not necessarily all these tears. So I had kind of told my bridesmaids that was kind of important to me, and we were standing out there ready to go down, and I thought I was doing pretty good. My dad's right there next to me. I have my arm there, and then it all kind of hits me. I'm like, oh, Mike's in here waiting for me, and this is the moment. I'm all ready for it. And I started feeling emotional. And I looked to one of my friends, and she could see it in my face, and she just kind of leaned over, and she was like, you can do it. And I was like, all right, I can do it. And then her offering that I could do it, the encouragement, that was making me cry. And I'm like, you're making it worse. You don't understand. Now I'm like crying because you're so sweet that you know what I'm thinking in this moment. So now I'm like, oh, great. Now I really am crying. And then my dad's pulling me, are you okay? I'm okay. I'm just going to lose it, but I'm okay. And then I heard her again, and she said, you can do it. And I'm thinking, okay, well, thanks, but I'm going to cry more the more that you do that. And then she just got really silly with it. It was exactly what I needed in the moment. She just kept going, you can do it. You can do it. You can do it. I know you can do it. You can do it. You could do it. And all of a sudden, everyone else is chanting it behind me, and my bridesmaids and everything, and I'm just standing there, and I just had the biggest smile, and I was laughing, and I was like, come on, let's do this thing. I'm going to get down the aisle. And then when I got all the way down here, then, of course, I was crying, and I was a blubbery mess. But I got through that part because she was literally chanting. She was chiding me. She was encouraging me, and it made all the difference. And we should have people in our lives that, for just a moment like that, are ready to do that. And, starting at the very beginning when I said we were not created to be alone, when you place yourself in a place where you're alone and you don't have people around you, you intentionally don't want to live life with people, then when those situations happen, those people aren't there for you. So I encourage you, no matter how hard it may be for you personally, to just surround yourself with people and make sure that you have those people on your team. All right, so let's see. Let's go ahead and go with number 4, and this one is celebrate. For team, David and his guide, they get to celebrate big time when they won the gold. And I watched a little video clip of it, and it's just awesome because you can see all of that hard work, all of the commitment that they had to each other and to the goal of winning the gold, and they achieved it. And they just were super excited. And so we get to celebrate in life, and they may seem, like little celebrations, but if there's a particularly hard time within your family or just, something that you've kind of set as a family goal and you reach it, just celebrate. Find a way to do that. And, as we talked about all these things that even within our family, what we do, it is not perfect at all. Often, it's like, I feel like things are out of whack, pretty often, but I have to tell you, celebrating when we are in sync with each other, when we are in the same stride, we feel like, we've won something, that's so important to celebrate. Also, it's a testimony for the people around you. Sometimes being vulnerable with people and telling them about, getting in a fight before you leave on vacation with your spouse is important because it lets people know that there is a way to get through difficult times, that you're not alone. You're not the only one that may have, a kid that's crying in the back seat and they just won't stop. And at the time, what's super important to them may not be important to you, but sometimes if you stop and just go, you know what, that's really important to them right now. Let me stop and think about if I was them, how I would want to be treated, and to maybe do something like that. That's what partnership and teamwork looks like. I have this awesome story of somebody within the church that went through a particularly trying time of they just had to be in unity throughout the whole thing. And they actually put together a God story, and I know that they're at home right now tuning in and watching. And my 4th point is celebrate. And this is their way to celebrate what God did in their family. So let's go ahead and watch it.
Hi, we're the Long family.
I'm Jill, and this is Josh.
And we have 2 daughters named Ava and Addison, who are twins, and they're 7 years old.
They were born at 27 weeks, where I was hospitalized for a week and a half before I had them, due to them being mono twins.
They did brain scans to make sure that everything was good since they were born so early, and Ava was diagnosed with polymicrogyria, which is a condition where the brain is not fully developed and it's not structured as it should be. Under the care of some doctors at Akron Children's, we were able to start a plan very early to help her to try to avoid seizures. She was able to have a good start of life on her medications, and we just took it day by day. So when Ava was about 2, she had her first seizure. We followed up with the neurologist again, and they gave her some more medicine. But at the time, they said, basically, since she had had the seizure while she was still on medicine, that she was medicine resistant. During all this time, the doctors kept saying the only way to really help her with seizures is to have surgery. We did everything that we could to avoid the surgery. At the end of last year, Jill and I knew that after,
Years of seizures
yeah.
and treatments not working and medication after medication. I mean, at one point, Ava was on 4 or 5 different seizure medicines, and none of them worked. And the doctor had told us that Ava would not have a good quality of life if this was something that we decided not to do.
We took Ava to the surgical unit, and she had the surgery. She did great. They were able to do a functional hemispherectomy, which is where they separate, or they disconnect the left hemisphere, which is where all of her seizures occurred. Our speech is on the left side of the brain, and so when you think about disconnecting the left side of the brain where speech is, Ava shouldn't be able to talk, but somehow,
By the grace of God.
the brain rewired itself to obviously put speech on the right side of the brain so that she can be sometimes extremely vocal. If anybody hearing this story ever has to go through something, just know that when you have Jesus Christ as your personal Savior and you devote your life to follow and trust Him, it's not going to be easy. You're not going to have a perfect life, but at the same time, He'll get you through it somehow, some way, and it's amazing His love and His devotion to people who don't deserve it at all. But we just give praise to God for our family, our church family coming through this, the strong bond that Jill and I have to be able to get through this as Ava's parents, and for Addison loving her sister and helping her whenever she can. It's just amazing. I'm Josh.
I'm Jill.
I'm Addison.
This is Ava.
And we're the Long family.
Such an inspiring story, and it's an honor for us to celebrate their family today and what the Lord did in their family. If you notice towards the end, Josh was saying, kind of listed out, exactly where they found their partnerships, within each other as parents. They had to be on the same page, even along with their girls, for Addison to, be there along with Ava through this whole journey, as well as their church family. And I was honored to be a part of Jill's small group where we just prayed and practically, helped and loved on them through the entire process. And it was awesome to watch how, as the times would come where maybe, one of them would be up and one would be down, God was consistently helping them to get back on the same page all the way through this. Unity was something that was very important to get them, through this time as well. So we celebrate that. I think this is a great example of what I'm talking about with sharing, the wins, the God stories in your own personal life with people around you, because I hope that was as encouraging to you as it was to me, to know that God is still moving within relationships, and it takes us doing our part to do that. So at this time, could you close your eyes with me? we are meant to be a part of a family or a team. And so, Lord, I come before you and ask that you'd work in each one of the hearts of people that are here and all those that are joining us online as well. In church, I'm going to list just some things for you to reflect on as you close your eyes. Maybe think about where you might be out of step within a certain relationship. Or maybe you're not. Maybe you have a relationship that's going very well. Just think about those things right now. Give place to that in your mind and heart. But inventory all of your relationships. Those people you see daily, those you don't see as often, but still those that you live life alongside. Think about maybe some areas you can change, that maybe you can be slow to take offense when someone does something. Maybe you can think of some goals that you want to set for your family, something you want to do differently within a relationship that you have. Maybe you need to think about somebody you need to check on. Maybe you lost touch and you're totally out of stride with each other, but the Lord can give you the name of somebody in your life that you can check on them and ask how they're doing and see what he has in plans for you. Maybe where can you pick up the slack? Think about that. As your eyes are closed, that you're just thinking of some areas that maybe you're not pulling your side of it. You're not being the best teammate. Maybe your partner has even, vocalized those things to you and you're still not doing them. Just what can you do for yourself personally to change and to be a better partner? Or maybe you need to think about who you can encourage or even receive encouragement from. As you close your eyes, just think about that. Or maybe think about something you can celebrate. Maybe you've downplayed something, a goal that you've set and you've achieved it, or just changes that have been made for the positive. What can you celebrate? That might mean you need to go out of your comfort zone. You need to share it with somebody. You may need to share it with somebody you work with, or even with the person that is your teammate, to just stop and celebrate it. And you may be here today and think, well, people keep talking about, Jesus and this relationship, and maybe you have yet to start the most important relationship that we can have, and that's your relationship with Jesus. He's the best teammate we can ever have and never lets us down. And so for you today, I'd encourage you to just acknowledge that you want him to become Lord of your life and invite him into your heart, and find a time to just pray that prayer to him and ask that he be Lord of your life, that you're not looking to run the race anymore by yourself. Instead, you will look to him and he will be your Lord. It's one of the most important relationships that we can have. And church, as you're thinking about these things, this shouldn't be just a one-time thing. Lord God, I just pray you'd help people to do this on a regular basis, that they would have their eyes on the people around them. Lord, that you'd give them the insight to speak up when they need to the people that they're living life with. Lord, I just pray that there'd be an impact from this, that it would go out from here like a wave, that as we each are better teammates, then we create better teams, and that has an impact on the people around us. Lord, we want to be the change in this world, and it be noticeable to the people around us, that coworkers wouldn't understand why we find ourselves being humble in tough situations, why we're so easy to get along with because we're thinking of others. So I just pray that you do a breakthrough in each of the situations everyone's thinking about here. Church, just take one more minute and just reflect on what the Lord might be showing you about how to be the best teammate. Thank you, Lord, for this time together. I thank you for this series about God honoring relationships. Just pray that it would be real to us, that we'd put it into practice, and our relationships would be different because of this. In your name we pray. Amen. Well, church, if you can stand with me while we close. We will have the prayer teams up here in the front if you're looking for somebody to pray with you. We want to do that. We want to live life alongside you and pray through things. Also, if you did pray for the first time to accept Christ into your heart, we do a fresh start pack with a Bible that is really going to set you on the course for some amazing things. Stop by the information center. We'd love to meet you and make sure that you have that. If you're online, then we'll have a link that will be given to you so that you can get on the right track with your relationship with the Lord. Church, we aren't going to end with a song, but instead I encourage you to go out from this place and to be a great teammate, to do something even yet today that would be encouraging to somebody else, and that you would come back next week ready for whatever God has for us. Everyone have a great week. We'll see you next Sunday.